In late 1943, the Pacific filled with the thunder of naval bombardments as American forces advanced through the Gilberts and Marshalls. The battleships arrived in force, their massive guns blazing, their hulls glowing under tropical sun. The Navy filmed them for propaganda reels. Newspapers published dramatic photos of night bombardments. The message was clear. America's battleships have returned. But within the fleet, a quieter debate raged. Carrier commanders, riding the crest of new doctrine, saw battleships as cumbersome and outdated, unable to keep pace with fast carrier task forces. Pilots joked that battleships were big targets that keep our enemies busy while we actually win the war. Battleship advocates responded with pride. No plane can match the psychological impact of a 16-inch broadside. And they were right about one thing: the impact was spectacular. Shells the size of telephone poles roared from the guns at 2,500 feet per second, lighting the horizon like molten suns. Entire beaches trembled. Jungle canopies disintegrated. Enemy bunkers collapsed into craters. Yet commanders on the ground sent back mixed reports. The bombardment was impressive, but the accuracy was questionable. Most shells overshot the target. The planes did more damage. Still, the battleships remained. In the Battle of the Philippine Sea in Leyte Gulf, they finally encountered the enemy, but not in the way their designers imagined. Carrier aircraft once again delivered the decisive blows, sinking the most powerful Japanese ships long before the American battleships arrived. In a diary entry from October 1944, a destroyer officer wrote, "The battleships are proud and furious." Harbor that was supposed to protect them. The muffled pops of cooling metal were the only sounds interrupting the funerary calm. And in that eerie quiet, one truth began to take shape. The age of the battleship, the unquestioned symbol of national power, was already dying. But America did not yet believe it. For decades, the battleship had been the nation's iron crown, the Navy's floating cathedral, the yardstick by which empires measured themselves. Presidents toured them. Congress funded them. Newspapers worshipped them. Admirals built their careers upon them. The United States poured fortune and faith into these steel leviathans, convinced that big guns, thick armor, and sheer tonnage represented destiny itself. Yet just offshore, the rising shape of a new empire, carried forward by aircraft carriers and the doctrine of the offensive, was rewriting the rules of war. This documentary is the story of that contradiction. A nation that believed its greatest strength lay in the battleship. Just as the world was proving the battleship had already passed its peak. On one side lay the American Navy, steeped in decades of tradition, doctrine, and budget battles. Admirals clung to the belief that the big gun decides the war, a mantra inherited from Jutland and the turn-of-the-century arms race. Billions of dollars and tens of thousands of workers were committed to the construction of these ships, steel giants capable of hurling ton-sized shells across 20 miles of ocean. On the other side rose the air. Before the world changed, before the sky became the battlefield, America believed in steel. Not just any steel, but armor plate, measured in inches thick and costing more per foot than some American families earned in a year. In the 1930s, the United States Navy devoted more than 60% of its capital ship budget to battleships. Congress approved these vessels not only as weapons but as symbols of national prestige, floating proof that the United States had entered the ranks of global powers. Politicians toured shipyards in Newport News and Philadelphia like pilgrims visiting holy sites. Newspaper headlines proclaimed new keels as if announcing royal births. Admirals spoke of displacement tonnage the way poets speak of starlight. Each new battleship represented more than firepower, it was an argument, a worldview hammered into steel. Yet, beneath the pride there was anxiety. Japan was rising. The Imperial Navy's carriers grew bolder, their pilots more skilled, their doctrine more daring. But inside the U.S. Navy's institutional memory, the decisive battle was still imagined as a Jutland-style slugfest, battleship against battleship across miles of open water. The fleet problems of the 1930s featured mock battles between heavy guns, while aircraft were often reduced to scouting units. The very idea that planes could sink a battleship, and do it consistently, seemed almost insulting. So America doubled down. Appropriations flowed. Designs expanded. The North Carolina, South Dakota, and Iowa classes emerged in elegant succession, each faster and better armored, each promising to outshoot and outrun any rival afloat. No one questioned whether the investment was wise. Battleships were tradition. Battleships were identity. Battleships were the Navy. And then came a the guns have fallen silent now. The battleships rest in harbors and museums, their steel cooled, their turrets frozen in place like monuments to another age. The war that gave them their final purpose has become history, and the world they were built to dominate has passed into memory. But their story, the story of America's most overvalued battleships, does not end with the last shot or the last surrender. It lingers, like the echo of a broadside rolling across an empty sea. Because history is not only what happened. History is what it reveals. As we step back from the Pacific, from the smoke and light of bombardments, from the towering silhouettes of battleships moving through the dawn, a deeper truth emerges. In the end, the battleship's fate was not about steel versus aircraft, nor about one vessel outperforming another. It was about something more human, the struggle between tradition and transformation, between memory and imagination, between what we wish to believe and what we must accept. For decades, Americans trusted the battleship as a symbol of certainty. A battleship was solid, visible, and reassuring. Its armor could be touched, its guns could be counted. In uncertain times, nations cling to symbols like anchors. And battleships were anchors, steady, proud, and deeply rooted in identity. But war has no patience for nostalgia. War exposes illusions with a cruelty that peacetime never requires. And in World War II, war revealed that America's greatest naval investment belonged to an era that no longer existed. A legacy of irony. The irony runs like a seam through the entire narrative. The battleships, built to deliver decisive blows, could not strike at midway. The carriers, once seen as auxiliaries, became the heart of naval strategy. The weapons expected to define the war ended up supporting those that actually did. And yet, victory did not erase the battleship's prestige. In the public imagination, the giant guns still thundered. The massive hulls still represented American power. Photographs of battleships bombarding Iwo Jima or Okinawa became iconic, even as historians noted that aircraft and submarines delivered the war's decisive outcomes. This duality, myth versus reality, forms the core of the battleship's legacy. What became of the battleships after the war? After 1945, America possessed a fleet of battleships more powerful than any that had sailed before. But the world had changed. Aviation ruled the oceans. Nuclear weapons reshaped the meaning of firepower.